Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
Hi everyone, welcome to the first video of Nerd Herd. When Joker 2 was first announced, there was a lot of excitement, given the impact of the original film. Joker became a cultural phenomenon, with Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal of Arthur Fleck praised for its depth and complexity. So, naturally, the expectations were sky-high for this sequel. But those expecting a continuation of the first film's gritty, psychological exploration are in for a shock. Joker 2 feels like a complete departure from everything that made the original movie compelling. This movie doesn't build on the foundation of the first Joker. Instead, it goes in a radically different direction, one that feels disjointed and lacks purpose. From the moment the film begins, you can tell something is off. It doesn't have the same intensity or focus. Instead, it feels like the filmmakers were trying to throw everything at the wall to see what sticks. It's as if they didn't really know what kind of story they wanted to tell. That confusion bleeds into the viewer experience. The first Joker was a grounded character study, showing how a man could be driven to madness by societal neglect. But in Joker 2, that narrative focus is lost. The plot feels like it's wandering aimlessly through scenes, with Arthur Fleck now a shadow of the complex character we saw in the first film. It becomes increasingly clear that this sequel wasn't meant to exist but was created purely because the original made so much money. That's where this movie suffers the most. It feels like a forced, soulless cash grab that lacks the passion of the first film. Fans of the original Joker will likely walk out of this one feeling not just disappointed, but confused as to why it even exists. One of the most controversial aspects of Joker 2 is its heavy reliance on musical numbers, something that completely diverges from the tone of the original film. Now, I knew going in that the movie had some musical elements, but I wasn't prepared for just how much they dominate the story. In fact, these musical sequences seem to be the film's primary focus. But here's the problem. They often feel forced, unnecessary, and at times, even distracting. It's as if the filmmakers wanted to create a musical just because Lady Gaga was involved, and they didn't quite know how to make it blend seamlessly into the story. In terms of execution, there's no denying that some of the visuals during the musical numbers are stunning. They pull off some great set pieces, and Lady Gaga delivers as you'd expect. She's an incredible performer. But the problem is that these sequences don't add anything to the story. They feel like filler, padding out a movie that otherwise lacks a coherent narrative. It's almost like the filmmakers didn't know how to move the plot forward, so they inserted a song to distract the audience from the fact that nothing is really happening. What's even more frustrating is that these musical numbers are often completely disconnected from the scenes that precede or follow them. They're like isolated fantasy moments in Arthur's head that do nothing to progress the story. Sure, musicals can work in films when they serve the narrative, but here, they're just bloated interruptions. If you're a fan of musicals, you might enjoy these sequences on a surface level, but for anyone expecting the dark, grounded tone of the first Joker, this will feel like a jarring and unwelcome detour. One of the most frustrating aspects of Joker 2 is how it handles Arthur Fleck's character. In the first Joker movie, we witnessed an intricate psychological journey, where Arthur evolved from a fragile, marginalized individual into the terrifying and confident Joker. That transformation was what made the film so compelling. It was a deep dive into how society could push someone to the brink and beyond. But in Joker 2, all that progress is undone. Arthur isn't the Joker anymore. In fact, much of the movie doesn't feel like it's about the Joker at all. It's about Arthur Fleck, the sad, broken man from the start of the first movie. He's completely regressed. Gone is the confident, menacing figure we saw in the final scenes of Joker. Instead, we're left with someone who has lost all the bravado and self-assuredness that came with his transformation. It feels like the filmmakers didn't know how to continue his arc, so they simply reset him to his pre-Joker state, leaving us with a character that is hard to root for or even care about. What's worse is that this regression feels like a step backward not just for Arthur, but for the entire narrative of the Joker saga. In Joker 2, Arthur spends most of his time as a passive, helpless character. He's no longer the driving force of the story. Instead, he's dragged along by events, lost in musical fantasies, and spends a lot of time just being sad. While Joaquin Phoenix still delivers an incredible performance, the material he's working with doesn't do him justice. The psychological complexity that made the first movie so engaging is almost entirely absent here, replaced with a character that feels hollow and directionless. For fans of the original Joker, this regression is not just disappointing, it's downright frustrating. One of the biggest draws for Joker 2 was Lady Gaga's portrayal of Harley Quinn. When it was first announced that she would be playing this iconic character, many were excited to see her take on the role. After all, Gaga has proven herself as an exceptional performer, both musically and as an actress. And in some ways, she delivers in Joker 2. Her musical performances are, as expected, top-notch. Gaga shines in the musical numbers, and her voice adds a layer of emotion that might not have been there otherwise. However, the problem lies in how her character is written and integrated into the story. In Joker 2, Harley Quinn's role is largely reduced to being a vehicle for these musical sequences. Instead of giving Gaga the opportunity to explore the depths of Harley's complex psychology, the film focuses more on her singing and less on her acting. This reduces her character to little more than a performer, robbing the audience of the potential to see a truly dynamic Harley Quinn. What's also frustrating is that, like Arthur, Harley's character feels disconnected from the narrative. Her relationship with Arthur is central to the story, but it's often overshadowed by the musical numbers. There are moments where Harley's manipulative side shines through, and you can see her subtly pulling Arthur in different directions. But these moments are fleeting and often drowned out by song. It's a shame because there was real potential here to show a deeper, more complex version of Harley Quinn, but instead, the film sidelines her in favor of spectacle. In the end, while Gaga's performance is impressive in parts, it feels like a missed opportunity. Instead of letting her fully embody the character of Harley Quinn, the film uses her more as a singer than as an actress, and that limits what could have been one of the film's few saving graces. A large portion of Joker 2 takes place in a courtroom, with Arthur facing trial for the events of the first film. On paper, this could have been a fascinating narrative choice. After all, we saw Arthur embrace his Joker persona by the end of the first movie, so a trial could serve as an exploration of his duality or a deeper dive into his fractured psyche. But instead, the courtroom scenes in Joker 2 are underwhelming and, frankly, tedious. The movie spends a lot of time rehashing what we already know. We've seen the events of the first Joker, so going over them again in a courtroom setting feels like a waste of time. The tension that should come from a trial like this is completely absent. Instead of gripping drama or intense moments, the trial scenes are flat and lack any real stake. Even when Arthur tries to slip into his Joker persona during the courtroom scenes, it doesn't work. His attempts to argue for himself feel weak and ineffective, and rather than creating a compelling narrative, it becomes a recap of the first film. There are a few moments that stand out. For example, the back and forth between Gary and Arthur in the courtroom is one of the film's stronger scenes. It captures some of the tension and unpredictability that the movie desperately needs more of. But those moments are few and far between, and most of the courtroom drama feels like a missed opportunity. The scenes lack emotional weight, and the trial itself feels more like filler than a crucial part of the story. Instead of advancing Arthur's character or exploring the Joker's transformation, the courtroom scenes simply drag the movie down, making an already slow film feel even slower. One of the biggest issues with Joker 2 is the lack of narrative cohesion. The film feels like a collection of disjointed ideas that don't quite come together to form a cohesive story. The first Joker had a clear thematic focus. It was a psychological thriller that explored how society can push individuals to the edge. But Joker 2 seems unsure of what it wants to say. The movie throws out several themes: mental illness, the nature of identity, societal violence, but it never commits to any of them. This lack of focus is most apparent in the film's constant shifts in tone and style. One moment we're in a courtroom drama, the next we're in a musical sequence, and then suddenly, we're in Arthur's head as he imagines different scenarios. These shifts are jarring and make the movie feel fragmented. It's as if the filmmakers were trying to create something avant-garde or unconventional, but in doing so, they sacrificed the story's clarity and emotional impact. The musical numbers, while visually striking, feel completely disconnected from the rest of the narrative. They don't serve to advance the plot or deepen our understanding of Arthur's character. Instead, they come across as random interludes that break the flow of the movie. It's hard to get invested in Arthur's journey when the film keeps pulling us out of the story with these unrelated musical sequences. At its core, Joker 2 seems to be trying to explore Arthur's fractured identity, whether he is Arthur Fleck or the Joker, or both. But the execution of this theme is muddled. The film spends so much time jumping between different styles and tones that it never gives the audience a chance to fully engage with Arthur's internal struggle. Instead of feeling like a deep dive into a complex character, the movie feels like a series of unrelated scenes stitched together, with no clear direction or purpose. Now let's talk about the ending of Joker 2, which is easily one of the most controversial aspects of the film. Throughout the movie, there's an underlying tension as we watch Arthur navigate his trial, his relationship with Harley Quinn, and the constant battle between his Arthur Fleck persona and the Joker persona. You might expect that all of this would lead to a satisfying conclusion, a resolution that either cements Arthur as the Joker or takes his story in a bold new direction. Unfortunately, the ending feels rushed, confusing, and unsatisfying. Without getting too deep into spoilers, the ending involves a random twist where Arthur is suddenly killed in a hallway by a character who had barely been developed throughout the film. This character, who seemed to be lurking in the background for much of the story, abruptly stabs Arthur multiple times and then starts carving a smile into his own face, a moment that appears to reference Heath Ledger's version of the Joker. But this twist feels disconnected from everything that came before it. The film spends a lot of time building up Arthur's internal conflict, only to end it abruptly with a scene that seems to come out of nowhere. What makes the ending even more frustrating is that it doesn't feel earned. The movie doesn't lead up to this moment in any meaningful way, and instead of offering a resolution to Arthur's character arc, it feels like the filmmakers threw in a shocking twist for the sake of it. The final scenes feel hollow, and Arthur's death doesn't have the emotional weight it should. It's a confusing, frustrating end to a film that already struggles with narrative focus. Fans of the first Joker film will likely walk away from this ending feeling disappointed. Not only does it fail to provide closure for Arthur's journey, but it also leaves the audience with more questions than answers. It's the kind of ending that will have people talking, but for all the wrong reasons. One of the most common reactions to Joker 2 is how drastically it differs from the first film. The original Joker was a character-driven masterpiece that explored Arthur Fleck's descent into madness, brilliantly portraying how societal neglect can turn someone into a monster. It was a grounded, psychological thriller that felt raw and real. Joker 2, on the other hand, feels like a completely different movie, and not in a good way. Instead of building on the powerful narrative of the first film, Joker 2 almost seems to undermine it. The transformation that Arthur went through in the first movie is essentially undone here. The film regresses him back into his pre-Joker state, making much of the original's emotional weight feel pointless. Fans expecting to see Arthur fully embrace his Joker persona and evolve further will be sorely disappointed. What's more confusing is how Joker 2 seems to have a grudge against the first film. It's as if the filmmakers wanted to distance themselves from everything that made the original successful. Rather than expanding on the themes of mental illness, societal breakdown, and personal transformation, Joker 2 replaces them with disjointed musical numbers and courtroom scenes that go nowhere. This shift in tone and focus feels like a betrayal to fans of the first movie, who were hoping for a continuation of Arthur's story. It's hard to even think of Joker 2 as a proper sequel. While it shares the same characters and exists in the same universe, it feels disconnected from the first film in almost every way. The depth, nuance, and emotional complexity that define Joker are nowhere to be found in Joker 2, and what's left is a film that feels hollow and unnecessary. Joker 2 has not only divided audiences in terms of its content but has also struggled at the box office. After the massive success of the first Joker, which grossed over $1 billion worldwide, expectations were high for the sequel. But Joker 2 has significantly underperformed. Domestically, it opened to just $37.8 million, which is shockingly low, especially when you consider the kind of numbers comic book movies usually pull in. To put that into perspective, it earned less than Morbius, which is widely considered one of the worst comic book films in recent history. The global numbers are slightly better, with Joker 2 bringing in around $114 million. However, even that number falls far short of what the studio was expecting. Given the massive budget for the film, which included hefty salaries for both Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga, the box office performance has been a disaster. The studio stands to lose over $150 million if the film continues on its current trajectory, which is a huge blow, especially for a project with such high expectations. Beyond the box office, the reception from both critics and audiences has been overwhelmingly negative. The film holds one of the lowest cinema scores for a comic book movie, sitting at a D. To put that in context, even Fantastic Four 2015, which is often considered a disaster, managed a higher score. The critical and audience response reflects the confusion and disappointment that many felt after watching the film. Overall, the box office numbers and poor reception show just how much Joker 2 missed the mark. It's a movie that not only failed to live up to the legacy of the first Joker but also failed to capture the interest of a mainstream audience. The financial loss is just the final nail in the coffin for a film that feels like it never should have been made in the first place. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.